a pressing issue that's been like magnified by the pandemic. So over the last few years, these are like headlines that we've been seeing in the news, and these really upset me because it displays the inequality and it really puts it into perspective for us all. So I wanted to go below the headlines and I really wanted to investigate like the reality of child poverty. So currently there are 4.2 million children in the UK that are living in poverty. 46% are from 46% of children are from BAME backgrounds that are living in poverty, and 26% of children from a white background are living in poverty. 1.3 million children in the UK currently also depend on free school meals. But these numbers don't really mean anything without context. So let's look at a graph which puts it into perspective for the whole world. So as you can see here, United Kingdom is 23rd on this scale of countries, of developing and developed countries. But if we can see at the top over here, we have the Nordic countries, Finland, Denmark, Iceland. This kind of shocked me because the United Kingdom is a G7 country, yet we're still so high up. So I really wanted to find out why this is the case. So if we look at what causes child poverty, low paying jobs and employment terms are one of the main causes. 72% of children living in poverty actually have parents who work, so the issue lies more within the wages that are being paid for the jobs or the employment terms like 0-hour contracts. Also things like the cost of living. So a JRF study showed that the prices of essentials increased 3 times faster than the rate at which average wages increased. So unavoidable costs are increasing for families who do not necessarily earn as much. And also the main thing is the lack of education. Now this drives up not only short-term inequality, but also future inequality because it causes a vicious cycle for our future generations. In fact, 1 in 5 children are not going to gain basic level 2 qualifications at 16. So this is 5 GCSE grades, A star to C or 9 to 4. 1/3 of children in Nottingham, in a region, for example, with high child poverty, do not actually meet the level 2 requirements. Yet the government spend £100,000 per child over the course of the 14 years of compulsory education. So this kind of shows that even if the government is spending money on our education, it's not necessarily the most effective way of tackling this issue. If we take a look at deprivation and poverty in England as a whole, we can see through the index multiple deprivation viewer that most of the inequality and deprivation is concentrated around cities, so mainly London, Birmingham, Manchester, the 3 biggest cities in the UK. And 13 out of the 20 parliamentary constituencies with the highest poverty and child poverty rates are located within those cities. And if we take a closer look at London, we can see here there is a massive red zone in northeast London over here. Tower Hamlets, Newham and Hackney are all the most deprived boroughs in London, and they have the highest child poverty rates, 53.4%, 43.2% and 41.3% respectively. This was a staggering statistic because these boroughs are so close to extremely wealthy areas like Kensington and Chelsea, where average house prices are like £1 million. So, as I mentioned already, Nordic countries are an example of areas where they have very low child poverty. So let's actually take a look at what they're doing. So Nordic countries have the lowest poverty and child poverty rates in the world. 10% is the child poverty rate in Finland, while it's 30% for the UK. So if we look at the policy interventions in the Nordic countries have the lowest unemployment rates in the world. And this is because it's a welfare state economy. So their whole model is based on socio-economic equality, where they seriously encourage people their main focus is on people being employed and being happy. Now, there are several schemes like House First in Finland, which basically ensures that homeless people or people who cannot necessarily afford housing have short-term housing so that they can recover in the short term. But also, more monumentally, they introduced the universal basic income scheme. Well, they trialed it at least in 2017, where they gave 2,000 unemployed people access to up to $680 a month. So over the course of 2 years, they found that the well-being and the mental health of these citizens definitely improved, because it meant they weren't worrying as much about, getting a job, etc. But unfortunately, it didn't necessarily positively impact the work statuses of the people. So if we look at what's being done in the UK right now, we have a large array of schemes like different benefits, universal credit, etc. But clearly, it's not enough, as we can see, because there's still extremely high child poverty rates. So I really wanted to look at what we can learn from these Nordic countries and what we could propose as solutions. So the first thing was to implement a universal basic income scheme. Now, this one is a 50-50 one, because as we saw in Finland, it didn't necessarily work. But I think if we trialed it in the UK, it would be a good chance to try and recover this massive inequality we have present in the country. Also, improve childcare. So now, a massive issue that we have in the UK as well is that a lot of the time, all the parents are working. So a lot of people have both parents working or one parent working, whatever, which means that the parents have to pay for their child to be babysit or taken care of, which is a massive strain on families who do not necessarily have the financial budget for that, which means that a lot of the time they take time off work to take care of their young child, especially if it's young, because if you're older, it's easier. So improve childcare, so make it cheaper or make it free. Increase government investment in deprived areas to make them more livable. So a lot of the problem is based on also the environment that these kids live in. So if you make them a nicer area to live in, automatically they're going to have much better mental health and a more positive outlook on life. And also provide a stronger emphasis on the importance of higher education. Now, with education in general, a statistic from the Bevan Foundation I found actually showed that if deprived families got £7,000 extra per year as a household, their children is 50% more likely to have an increase in attainment. So if we could find some way where we have more targeted benefit systems to try and improve the financial climate of these families, I think it would benefit the children, because they will then be learning much better, and also they will have more access to future schemes and future job prospects like apprenticeships and jobs, maybe even university. So those were mainly to improve the financial climate of households. But what can be done for children themselves? So increase access to tech. Now, currently, that's a massive thing. We're currently in a lockdown. And obviously, with the whole bubble system and Corona in general, technology is more important than ever. Also, improve schooling in low-income areas. So now, when I say that, I mean provide more engaging curriculums, or make learning more engaging in certain ways to engage these children, and also extra mentoring and careers advisors to come in and inspire and help these children and improve their future prospects and also ramp up emergency accommodation services. Right now, like, temporary accommodation is all filled up, so we need to find a way that we can ramp it up even more, and also things like job centers. So that's it from me. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If there are any questions, or please do ask away. I was thinking maybe breakout rooms.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of setting them up now. So if anyone has any questions in the meantime they would like to ask.
Yeah, sure.
Go for it. for like a minute or two, and I'll set them up now. I think Shrey has a question. It's hammering up. And Tom in the chat.
Could I ask my question?
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of the Nordic countries, but given that Norway, that these kind of countries have very small populations, like I think Norway only has 5 million people, which is, I mean, smaller than London. Do you think it's these schemes, which are very expensive, can be applied to such a big population that the UK has?
Thanks for your question. So you do definitely raise a really good point. Norway does have a very small population, and the Nordic countries in general. But I think we should at least trial these schemes, because although Norway does have a smaller population, you also do have to look at the proportion of these people that are unemployed. Now, obviously, UK is much bigger population-wise, so it would be hard. But I think if we trial it, I think it'd be worth a shot. Tom had a question. What do you think is the original source of poverty for these people? I think there are various different sources of poverty. So a lot of people are born into, say, hard, tough situations in terms of their family life, but also a lot of people don't have parents who necessarily would be able to provide for them. Also, things like health issues. So there are many young carers out there as well, which means that they're already in like existing poverty. Yeah.
I think Ed's got his hand up.
Hey, thank you for the talk. I enjoyed it. It's really informative. I was wondering though, you try to compare Britain to the Nordic countries quite a lot and to find alternatives, right? And the issue I think there is with that is that the Nordic countries generally, like for example, if we look at, I think it's Finland, they have a sovereign wealth fund that they use to fund these extensive welfare programs with, and that came from oil in the North Sea. Where do you think, or how do you think that would apply to Britain? Where are we going to find the money to fund these welfare programs that you're proposing?
So I think currently the government could maybe look at rearranging the budget, because there's a massive focus right now on I think right now the recent schemes that have been introduced, like the furlough schemes, are good, but I think that, for example, with that furlough scheme, it's kind of deferring the inevitable. So if they look at maybe spending that money on providing potentially more help, and also reassessing their budgets that they spend on things like defense and stuff, like military weapons, nuclear budget, for example, I think they'd be able to get a lot of money from that.
Wait, sorry. So you said you'd stop furlough in order to pay for?
No, not stop furlough, but I mean, there could have been a more effective way of tackling job losses, and instead they could have spent a bit more money on, I don't know, providing for the kids.
Okay, thank you.
I think Sheena's got a question.
Yeah, you just this is sort of leading on from your point about furlough, but furlough is a very short-term solution to all of these problems, which you did raise. But lots of the solutions that you're providing seem to be long-term, such as education. That's going to take at least a generation to have an effect on child poverty. So what do you think can be done in the short term to have effects that won't massively, like, you're saying rearrange the budget, but rearrange the budget, what do you decrease spending from in order to increase spending to reduce child poverty?
So I think right now with like social media and stuff, one of the most effective things we can do is campaigns that would encourage children to stay in education for longer and really emphasize the benefits of higher education and staying in school for longer. Because I think a lot of people are put off by the fact that, potentially education is a very long process, which it is, but it is obviously very beneficial in the long run. So I think if there's more advertising campaigns and stuff to help encourage these kids, then it would definitely work.
I understand what you mean, but that nevertheless that won't take effect for 20 years. What do you think you should do now? What do you think that the government should do now to tackle it? Because this stuff, like if you wait for education to take its effect, there'll be children that are in poverty for the next 20 years, and you'll just say that we can't do anything about it.
To be honest, I'm not actually quite sure about what we could do in the short term, but maybe we could use the breakout rooms to discuss what we all think.
Yeah, I've got them set up now. So if you guys, I'm ready to. If you're hand over to breakout rooms, I can start them now.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Yeah, Dom. Can you hear me?
So what did you guys come up with?
We were kind of trying to balance long and short-term solutions for child poverty.
I think, like, in general with child poverty, short-term solutions are going to be pretty difficult because it's something that's existed for ages. It's not something you can just, eradicate in a month or two. But I think there are definitely steps you can take. But,
our group basically came to the conclusion that we need to make money to be able to spend it. So one of the first steps is to make Britain more competitive after Brexit and after the massive debt we have already from coronavirus. And Ed and Ruby suggested like education and tech as like particular industries we could start specializing in, and just sort of like try and grow the economy, and then have the money to spend on these welfare programs, and then basically make the whole country benefit in theory from the growth of the private sector.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like a really good idea.
I think Kieran put in the chat that short-term solutions tend to also be very expensive, and I think I certainly agree with that. But also the fact that the way education is a long-term process, like learning. It's not like a short-term solution you can get hit with a book over the head and like learn the topic instantly. You do have to, like, it's a few years that you need to take to sit down and learn a course, for example. So it's not like you can't enhance education to that extent, but there are other solutions. I think some other groups discussed that with laptops. I don't know what's going on at room 3. If someone wants to say something about that.
I think that was our room. Jerry mentioned the laptops being handed out to like deprived areas. Like that linked in with the point I was talking about with regards to tech being provided to younger kids. That's a massive step forward. But that said, the manner in which it was handed out was really poor, because it took a really long time for them to organize that whole scheme. So, yeah.
I think I also read somewhere that those laptops had a bunch of malware on it that were like a couple of years old.
Yeah, but they were like basically infected laptops. So
yeah, not all of them, but some of them. But yeah, I think it's almost launched end of lunch now anyway. So we're gonna bring this to a close. Thank everyone for coming. Thank you, Krishna, for this great talk.
thank you everyone for listening.
I hope to see you again next week.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Krishna.
Thank you, everyone.